Hi, and welcome to Fooled by Plants. You know, it's that season where we start getting invited to all these holiday parties. And one thing that I always like to do is make sure that I take something that both plant based eaters and non plant based eaters can eat and enjoy equally. So today we're going to make my spinach artichoke dip. This is always a fan favorite. It's super easy to make. And we are going to pre make some of it in our pan, but it does get transferred and it does get baked. But more about that at the end of the recipe. So in a pot, I have already cooked, lightly sprayed with cooking spray. I'm going to put on medium heat. And into our pan, I'm going to add 1/2 of a diced white onion and 2 cloves of diced garlic. You can use jarred, you can use prepared, prepared. It doesn't really matter. So we're just going to throw those in and just get those starting to cook just a little bit before we add all of our other ingredients. This is probably going to take about 2 to 3 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to speed up and I'll catch you back in a few seconds, which for me will be a few minutes. All right, so now that our onions and our garlic have had a chance to cook out a little bit, we don't want to get them completely cooked because this again is going to go and it's going to bake and you're going to want all those flavors to come out into the dip. I am going to add, oh, first take your burner down too low. So to the onions, I'm going to add 16 ounces or 2 containers of your favorite plant-based cream cheese. This is the one that I ended up getting today at the store. And most cream cheese, plant based or real, they all come in 8-ounce packages. So you're going to want to put both full containers in. And we are going to let this kind of start to melt and mix in with the onions and the garlic. And to help with that, we are going to add in 1/2 cup of plant-based sour cream, 1/2 cup plant-based mayonnaise. So we got those all in there. Let's give it a stir. And we're going to break up and combine that cream cheese with the onions and the garlic, the mayo, and the sour cream into what's more of a sauce-like consistency. You can use a spatula to break up the cream cheese and get it into smaller pieces to help it melt faster. And it will melt very quickly. You just want to make sure that you don't have any big lumps or clumps of cream cheese in your mixture, because while it will completely melt while you're baking it in the oven, you don't want someone to grab a piece of cream cheese as the main part of the dip. You want everything to kind of be evenly distributed throughout. All right, so that is starting to break up very nicely. So I am now going to add in 1 cup of plant-based mozzarella cheese and 1 cup shredded plant-based Parmesan cheese. And now we're going to incorporate those cheeses into our other mixture. Again, it's all about making sure everything is evenly distributed, everything gets incorporated evenly so that regardless when somebody goes into this dip, it'll taste the same from the first bite to the last. All right, now that's kind of all folded together and melting quite nicely. Now I'm going to add one 14-ounce can of artichoke hearts that have been diced and drained. And we're going to add that in, give it a stir, and incorporate that into our mixture. I always like to incorporate ingredients in stages because I just feel like that's a better way to make sure everything does get evenly distributed instead of dumping everything in at once and then trying to mix everything together. It just always seemed easier to do it this way. So once you have all of your artichoke hearts that have been diced and drained incorporated into the mixture, we are now going to add 20 ounces of frozen spinach. So they came in two 10-ounce packages. So it's two 10-ounce package frozen spinach. It's been thawed, squeezed, and completely drained so that it's most of the moisture has been pulled out of it. So we're going to add that 20 ounces of the drained and squeezed frozen spinach into our mix. And we're going to stir until that's fully incorporated. All in all, this recipe prep time should only take us about 5 minutes. It's not that hard. I mean, it does take a little bit longer if you're prepping everything like I do and put it in little dishes and make it easier to do a demonstration. But at home, when you're just doing it, just take 5-10 minutes tops to prep. And that is all we need to do for this part of our dip. Now what we need to do, however, is we're going to need to transfer this into a vessel that we can bake in the oven. So I'm going to a party and I'm not going to want to bring dishes home and clean them after the party. So I am using a disposable aluminum pan. You can use a baking dish. You can bake this in really anything. I have lightly coated the aluminum foil pan with some cooking spray just to make sure nothing sticks. And we are now just going to transfer the contents of our spinach artichoke dip into the aluminum pan. Make sure we get everything. And as I throw some all over the counter. All right, just evenly spread that out in the pan. And that's what it will look like fresh in the pan. Now, I do a little bit extra before I start baking it, and I have diced one small tomato. So I'm going to dice a tomato and throw it on the top. It gives it a little bit of color, and actually the tomato does give it a nice fresh taste, even though we're baking it with the tomatoes. It just, it's nice, and it's festive, right? So what says holidays more than something that's red and green? And there we go. We got all of our tomato on top. And I'm just going to finish it off by taking a little bit more of that plant-based Parmesan cheese and just going to microplane a little bit over top of everything. So that when it cooks, it'll melt and it will just make the tomatoes look like they're fully incorporated into the dip. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That is our spinach artichoke dip. We are now going to cover this with aluminum foil and put into a preheated 350-degree oven. You're going to cook this covered for 20 minutes, remove the foil, and cook another 10 minutes. Then all you have to do is pull it out and let it rest for a few minutes, and then you can either put this into another dish if you want to make it nice and serve it in something nice. But mine will be putting a lid on this and taking this to the party, and people are going to eat it right out of this container. So, can we be fooled by plants? We're going to find out, because I'm going to throw this in the oven and I'm going to set a little bit of this aside so that I can bake it and show you what it's like. But we'll try it after we recap this recipe. So our spinach artichoke dip is complete, and I'm just going to give it a taste to see how it's going to go over at the party. I like to serve these on sliced baguettes. I feel like that's a really good thing to serve dips on. Mmm, that's delicious. Rich, creamy, oh, very tasty. So I have been fooled by plants. I have spinach stuck in my teeth. It's your turn to see if you're fooled by plants. For this recipe, please visit fooledbyplants.com and follow us on our social medias. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Thanks, and see you next time.